Welcome to the Computer Podcast. Interesting programming direct from Ottawa, Canada's capital, bringing you all sorts of interesting information about computers, information technology, and the Internet. I'm your host, Norman Jack, and with me, of course, my co-host, George Valenzuela. Hello, George.
Hey, Norm. Good to hear from you again.
How are you doing out there in the beautiful east end of Ottawa these days?
Oh, it's just peachy over here. Peachy. Yeah. We got some snow this week, rain, sun, everything. It's a mixed bag. Typical spring in Ottawa.
3 seasons in one. What the heck?
Exactly.
And all on one day, too. I think last Monday it was like that, wasn't it?
I think you're right. Yeah, Monday or Tuesday, something like that.
Yeah. With us again, of course, our special guest, Paul Middleveen from the Trailing Edge in Ottawa, tte.ca. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Hi, thank you. Doing very well. And the guys are keeping busy at the shop and staying as socially distanced as possible.
Well, that's good to hear. Listen, we were talking on the last show, George, you brought up the specific point. We were talking home security, and one of the things you mentioned is people have to take extra special care now because a lot of people have brought work laptops home so that they can work from home. That creates a whole different scenario because, you have no IT team keeping an eye on security like you do at the office these days. And I noticed a story out of Reuters in the last day or two that hacking activity against corporations in the U.S. and in several other countries have doubled in the past month as people take advantage of the security weakened by the pandemic outbreak, specifically people taking their work computers home.
Well, that's one aspect, and unfortunately, there's all sorts of nefarious people out there who are going to take advantage of this kind of crisis for their own gain. The incidents apparently of phishing campaigns as well. Emails designed to grab sensitive information by preying on your fears about the coronavirus and COVID-19. Apparently, there's something millions a day are being found by Google, 18 or 20 million a day. Which are spiking tremendously, right? So unfortunately, you're going to be bombarded by these types of things, and you just have to be on your guard even more so. Not just physical security, but digital security, and make sure you're not taken in by these social engineering phishing emails.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about this because we've had warnings from police over the last several weeks that people should beware. Let's face it, if you've applied for the Canada benefit, for example, if your job hours have disappeared or have been cut back and you're applying for the federal benefit, nobody's going to send you an email saying you qualify. Can I have your credit card number, please?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, good point.
Stay away from things like that, folks, because those websites, the government websites, are asking you for deposit information so they can deposit the money directly into your account. They're never going to ask for something like a credit card number or your personal type information like that. They don't need it, and they're certainly not going to do it by email.
And I will guarantee you 100% that you won't be contacted by a doctor with a miracle cure, and all you have to do is provide your social insurance number or bank account number. It's just not going to happen, so you can immediately disregard emails of that nature as well.
Yeah. Now, even I noticed in this particular article about laptop security, they're even talking about people who are using virtual private networks having problems as well. Let's go over quickly again some of the steps you can take if you brought your work computer home with you to do work from home. How can you help secure your system a little bit better?
Well, even before you bring it home, before you connect it to your home network, I would probably take the steps that, to look over all of the devices that you're currently running on your system, on your home network. If you have what are called IoT devices, smart devices, plugs, doorbells, security cameras, things like that. Consider putting those on a separate SSID, a separate Wi-Fi group. Typically, there's most modern routers will come with a guest account as well, or a guest SSID, which you can physically separate, and control access to from your main one. So I would put all of the IoT devices that you've got into that guest area before even connecting my work laptop. Obviously, don't use your work laptop at home unless you're working, right? So make sure that you're using it only on your company provided VPN. And when you're using it, really put yourself in the mindset that you're at work. You're not at home. While you're using something that is, designed for work, just think that you're in the office. Whatever you wouldn't do in the office, don't do it just because you're working from home. So don't open that email from your long lost friend. Don't go to Facebook if you're not allowed to go there at work. Don't do it when you're working from home. Use your other computer and keep the two separate. Right. That's the first step, and that's going to probably account for the vast majority of break-ins and things like that. It's just common sense stuff that you just have to be even more mindful of when you're using work property at home.
Okay. Good advice. Now, of course, we're all sitting at home these days. A lot of us are trying to keep ourselves occupied. Lots of things to do on the internet when you can get on safely, of course. All sorts of sites to go to and virtual tours. So we thought we'd put together some of our favorites in the show today, and we'll be putting them up on the blog later on as well. But let's start with Paul Middleveen. Paul, you have a whole raft of different things out there that you've been looking at over the past little while. What struck you as sort of the best types of sites that you've been to keep yourself occupied?
Well, I mean, we all have our own interests, but with education on the mind and free is always good. I did find a few different websites that people might be interested in checking out. One of them being edX.org. Essentially, it's a massive online course provider. You can take courses from, well, A to Z, really, science, accounting, whatever you want to get involved in, you can check out classes on there. It has over 2,500 courses available from various institutions like Harvard or MIT and Berkeley. So for the self-educator out there, this is awesome. The one thing, though, is that if you do want to get actual accredited certificates, then you have to pay for the course.
Gotcha.
Essentially, I think they have it so you have to pay for the exam. But at least the wealth of knowledge is available and there to you. And then another interesting one that I heard about is I think lynda.com, and it's part of LinkedIn. But for all the Ottawaites out there, if you go to the Ottawa Library and you have an Ottawa Library card or an account, you can log in to your Ottawa Library portal and essentially search for LYNDA, and you can find the Lynda app, and it's right there, and it's available through the Ottawa Library, and it's free. So they have many courses in there as well, from project management, human resources, AutoCAD, learning Office. So lots of really good stuff out there. And then there's another one from the Government of Ontario. The website is OntarioLearn.com. It's been around for several years, since I think 1995, but it's essentially a whole bunch of Ontario colleges getting together for the need of giving high quality online educational content to as many people as possible. So they have many courses that you can take through there. Again, there's going to be some that would be paid for if you're going to go and get your accreditation. But as far as learning, it's just amazing. They have many different start times throughout the year. They're very flexible. And they do have a 24-hour, 365-day tech support there for you as well. So those are definitely some good educational sites to check out.
Now, you also found a really good site for all the local businesses that are trying to keep afloat by going virtual, either by taking orders over the phone or online, and then arranging for delivery or curbside pickup as well. And this is a real boost because, number one, it helps local business. Number two, it avoids you having to go to the grocery store as frequently.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we all have to social distance and keep our best practices forward and make sure we're all very safe. So it's really nice to see the Ottawa community really gathering together and trying to support each other, and definitely supporting that small to medium-sized business, any business really, to help them out. So there's a local website, ottawaroadtrips.com, and it's brought to you by a local freelance travel writer. But there's some really good information on there about local, bakeries, farms, breweries, whatever you need, try and get it locally. And if you check out, I'm sure we'll have it added to our blog. You can check out the website and see what she had to say about all the various wonderful local suppliers. And I'm sure there are many people that you used to visit every day when you went downtown into the market or various areas across Ottawa. So definitely check that out, support local, and get your product delivered right to you.
And of course, a side benefit of that website too is that if you do want to take a tour in your car, doing it safely, you can find all sorts of details about that too.
Absolutely. It's just incredible how everybody's getting together and helping each other.
Now, George, what about you? What did you find on the internet that's keeping you occupied in your downtime these days?
Well, I've got enough, between working, I work for a high-tech company, so I'm online all the time. I've always been doing video calls, so this is nothing new, really. I'm just doing it from my office instead of my home office instead of my corporate office. I'm looking for something to do in my downtime. If I'm not making dinner or lunch, then I want to watch movies. I want to watch some shows. Of course, everybody's heard of Netflix. You've heard of Amazon Prime, and now Disney Plus is on the scene. But there's lots of little fringe sites that you can go to and get different kinds of movies, different genres of things. There's a whole list of them out there. There's tons and tons and tons of them. But three of the ones that are my favorites that I've found. One is actually from Sony, so it's fairly big. I didn't even know it existed, to be honest with you. It's called Crackle.com.
Oh.
It has access to some pretty high profile movies: The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, Boondock Saints, El Mariachi, Troll Hunter, and a bunch of series that are, I think, Sony properties. So I don't know if they own the other Marvel side of things. I haven't really gone digging too deep, but apparently there are some free previews you can have. Otherwise, it's a subscription service, but it looks to be very well supported with really, really good content, and you could probably spend days or weeks looking at all the content there. One thing that I'm a huge fan of is I'm a big fan of horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
and the horror genre, horror shows. There's an online service called Shudder.com. That's DDER, not Shutter, but Shudder.
Okay.
And it's $4.75 a month at the lowest offering, and it basically gives you access to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of weird horror movies, high-end, mainstream, and kind of niche horror movies. Very, very good stuff. Lots of shows that are there. Just a really cool site. If you've got a nervous disposition, you might not want to join up and watch some of these shows, but if you're a fan of the genre like I am and like my kids are, it's really, really fun. There's lots of good stuff on here, right? It's available on all the platforms, Apple TV, Roku, and things like that, and Chromecast. So very easy to get streaming on your main system. And if you have kids at home and you haven't bit the bullet and got Disney Plus, but you have fans of anime cartoons. I don't know if you guys are familiar with anime.
Yes.
I know one of my daughters subscribed to this. It's called Crunchyroll. And
Crunchyroll.
Yeah, Crunchyroll. They debut, I think they say they debut a new series every week or every month.
Oh, wow.
But they must have about 200,000 or 300,000 hours of every conceivable anime that you've ever heard of. From Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, Death Note, manga. They've got comics and everything, so they have like a really, really good website. They've got a store where you can buy all sorts of anime and manga things as well. But the main thing here is that you can watch literally months and months and months worth of anime cartoons. You can watch it in the original language. You can watch it with subtitles, whatever you like, in any language you want. It's really, really good service, and I think it starts at like $8.99 a month. And there's also like a 7 or 8 day trial that you can go. But apart from that, spend some time looking through YouTube. Again, you can probably spend a lifetime looking at YouTube and not even touching the surface of all the content that's out there. It's a never-ending list of movies and series and blogs and all types of video genres that you can imagine are out there. But that's basically what I've got. So I've got a much, much bigger list that I can't go through now, but I will make sure that I put that up on the blog post later.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, you mentioned YouTube, and I find a lot of old documentaries that have been posted up there, promotional things from companies, and a number of people that I follow who are using old documentary footage to do their own little shows as well. There's a guy named Mark Felton who publishes Second World War history vignettes on his YouTube channel using archival footage from the various newsreel agencies and such. And it turns out to be really good. He's a smart guy. He's a Brit. And even mentions Canada from time to time. One of the episodes he did actually was about Canadian paratroopers in a little-known incident in May of 1945, just as the Germans were starting to surrender, actually making a lightning dash through northern Germany to make sure that the Russians didn't make it into Denmark before the Germans surrendered. And a lot of people say that that dash and confronting the Russians at the last minute there was the reason Denmark wasn't a communist country after the war ended there. So a great place to go. Tons of content on YouTube. You're right. Definitely. I like museums. I always visit museums when I go to various cities, and there's some great virtual tour offerings out there. I'll just run through a couple of them. The Louvre in Paris, one of the world's iconic museums, of course. They offer a couple of tours. The biggest one there, of course, is the Egyptian Antiquities tour that they have, the virtual tour there. The Vatican Museum. If you've never been to the Vatican Museum, they have several impressive 360-degree virtual tours, including the Sistine Chapel. And, having been lucky enough to be there, the virtual tours in some ways are even better than being there because you can get up close and personal with all of the frescoes that line the Sistine Chapel and the other locations there. So that's a good one to go to. The British Museum is one of many museums that have partnered with Google to do virtual tours. You can move through the timelines of history in various regions of the world, and it will take you exactly to the exhibits that the British Museum has governing that particular area and time period. Goes all the way back 2 million years. 2 million years, they show you what looks like a rock, but is essentially one of the first ever human-built axe heads, chipped away by one of our ancestors, found in Kenya in the early 1960s. So you can start from 2 million years ago and work forward through history, or of course backwards, in all sorts of regions around the world. It's a fascinating tour. It's one of the places that you really need to go to. For art, of course, I'm a big fan of modern art, or at least the Impressionist series. So you've got a couple there. The Musée d'Orsay in Paris has a great little tour. The Rijksmuseum, if you're into the Renaissance, all the Dutch masters there, they've got some great gallery tours of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. If you are interested in natural history and you want more than the British Museum, you can also check out the Smithsonian National Museum of History, which is based in Washington. If you like airplanes, and I like airplanes too, so one of the best ones is the National Museum of the United States Air Force. They have a walkthrough of their entire display up online as well. And, if you like museums, you like to tour them, just go to the Google website, artsandculture.google.com, and any museum or exhibit that's partnered with Google to do virtual tours will be listed there. Now, live cams, animals. Put them together, and what do you get? Something that'll keep you amused for hours if you want to. And there's lots of zoos out there with live streaming cams. Some of the best, though, the first, probably the number one, has to be the San Diego Zoo. They have 11 or 12 different live cams on their various animal enclosures. You can see them doing the animals having their hijinks. Watching the monkeys is especially amusing. A lot of these websites are sort of geared towards kids, and they got flashy colors and, drawing things that you can do as well. But go for the webcams because you'll find tons of amusement there. If you like koala bears, there's a place in Brisbane, Australia, a zoo called the Lone Pine Koala Sanctuary that offers several koala cams. Koalas don't move very fast, so there's not a lot of action, but boy, are they cute. Now, the thing to remember, though, is these are live cams, and this is in Brisbane, Australia. They're 14 hours ahead of Eastern time. So, if you tune in at 10 o'clock in the morning and all you see is darkness and a koala snoozing away in the branch of a tree, that's because it's midnight the next day there.
Oh, it's not because the koalas are lazy?
No, okay. It's not because the koalas are lazy. So,
okay, just checking.
If you tune in and it looks awfully dark, that's because it is in Brisbane, Australia. So take that time into account. They're 10 hours ahead of GMT, so take that into account when you're looking at it. If you like aquatic life, probably the best one that I've seen so far is the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California. They've got live cams all over the place. You can see dolphins, you can see sea urchins, you can see octopuses, and you can see otters, which of course are really, really active creatures, funny creatures. They do funny things and they play around. So that's a great place to go as well. And if you want to look at polar bear cubs, the one place to go is the Ouwenhans Dierenpark in the Netherlands. You may remember earlier this year they had twin cubs born to a polar bear mom, and they had a big naming contest, and people from around the world suggested names for them. You can go in and watch what the polar bear cubs are doing. They're still juveniles, but they're not cute and cuddly anymore. They're inquisitive teenagers, shall we say. So you can go to their website and keep an eye on what the cubs are doing there. Now, they're about 6 hours ahead of us, so be careful with the timing there. But the great thing about this particular site is if it's nighttime and they don't have anything to show you, they run a daily highlights reel of what the two cubs have been doing through the day. So it's really kind of cool out there. So we'll get all that information together. We'll wrap it up into the blog posts and get it online for you when the show goes to air. And again, make sure you're careful out there, especially with your computer security if you're working from home, as we talked about earlier in the show. It's just not worth it to not take the extra precautions that George suggested just to keep everything safe. And be safe yourself out there as well. My thanks to Paul Middleveen, our special guest. Good to see you, Paul, and we'll talk to you next week as well.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for having me. My pleasure.
Okay, and George, we'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir, Norm.
Right here on the Computer Podcast. Interesting programming.